Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Ensuring Effective IT Infrastructure Monitoring in the Public Sector. My name is Greg Collins, and I'm the Product Marketing Manager for WhatsUp Gold. So before we get into the agenda, I'd like to do some quick webinar housekeeping. Just a reminder that if you can't hear us, try connecting to computer audio, not phone audio. If you have any questions, you can submit them in the space below. We'll try our best to answer them at the end. And finally, there's no need to record the session from your end, as it'll be made available on demand within the next few hours. So I'm here today to give you guys an overview on some of the things that we've learned from our customers who are in the public sector. What I want to do today is take a look at some of the challenges that the public sector face, the best practices that we've been able to determine by watching what makes them successful, how our product WhatsUp Gold can help, and then at the end we'll take some time to answer some questions that people may have. So I'm going to start by giving some context as to what WhatsUp Gold is to help you understand where we're coming from. One of the solutions Progress provides is an IT infrastructure monitoring solution called WhatsUp Gold. It's been around for many years, but what it really does is it allows users to avoid downtime by monitoring their IT infrastructure. They can get alerts about everything that's going on in their network, see exactly what's happening, allowing them to resolve network issues before their end users even notice. Customer base is particularly strong in the public sector for a number of reasons, but the reason I want to highlight is because these are the people we work with the most often. The product's very suitable for small to medium-sized enterprises and very easy to use. The benefit of that is that you get people from all levels of technical knowledge using the product, monitor their networks, and an example here could be monitoring one single high school all the way up to monitoring multiple university networks. So we see a range of issues and challenges, but we do notice that there are a few consistent across the board. So IT administrators in the public sector are often dealing with extremely tight budgets and limited access to updated and modern systems, yet at the same time are under tremendous pressure to resolve issues and be secure. The things that we have seen our customers complaining about are standard stuff. Networks are slow and they can't figure out why. They've got VMs all over the place and they're either not sure where they are, where they're hosted, or whether they've even been shut down. Everyone complains about the network being slow when they're trying to stream video or other media and it's choppy, and it's always the network's fault. So this leads to the next question of, where is all my bandwidth going? So that's a huge one right now, and any IT administrator will tell you right off the bat that this is one of their biggest questions. Who's using all the bandwidth and where is it going? And to find that out, they're using a variety of different tools, which in itself is a problem. They have to hop from system to system, looking at different views of the network, and they're not seeing everything in one in-context view that lets you see exactly how everything interacts. The issue that comes from this is that they're constantly under pressure to see what resources are being underused. For example, do they have 5 different AWS servers that are running right now, but only actually need one? Can some of these be decommissioned, or what old systems or stuff can we get rid of that's creating a massive drag? And then, of course, this is somewhat unique to the public sector, but they're under significant regulations for a variety of different reasons. Some of them may be internal local government policies, for example, but they must comply with regulations, and they're probably being required to prove that they're compliant on a consistent basis, and that in itself is a challenge. So leaving aside the whole issue of what happens if they do actually get attacked or leave a security hole if there's a data breach. And on top of that, they need to be able to prove regularly that, hey, we can abide by these regulations. So I want to take a look at the best practices. The first one we're going to look at here is know what your infrastructure is actually doing. As mentioned, some of the systems are aging, and very few, if any, of the people who are involved were around when that network was first built. There's a lot of pieces, a lot of equipment is old and clenched together, and if you don't know what that is, you're going to have real trouble making sure it's working and making sure it's up and running. If you can't see it, you can't actually manage it. Also, if you don't know that there's a problem, you're never going to be able to fix said problem. And this isn't just a matter of, oh, I'm new in the job, what's going on in this network? Things are changing all the time. You've got changes that are planned and changes that are unplanned. And you need to know what's running, what's connected, how everything is interdependent, and where things are physically. Because if you don't know, you're just setting yourself up for failure, really. One of the number one best practices is to run a layer 2-3 discovery and create a network map so that you know what you're looking at. And this is not just a one-time thing. Discoveries are actually snapshots, so they'll show you what's going on right now, but you need to run them regularly because, as we said, things are changing regularly. So once you've got a map, what's the next best practice? Well, you need to monitor that infrastructure, and that means keeping an eye on how it's actually doing. You're looking at things like availability, performance, and you need to see whether data is going through smoothly or is something slowing down. This covers your wired and wireless infrastructure and your virtual and cloud infrastructures. Anything that can be moving data is something that can be impacting your end users' experience. And if you can figure out what's going on, you can usually fix issues before they start impacting those end users. And that's huge. That's why it has to be vendor agnostic. If you're looking at just your Cisco operating tools, they're not going to necessarily give you any level of insight into, for example, your Dell storage devices. You want something that can look at all of it and put it together, because otherwise you end up with finger pointing. If you can see something in context, it's a lot easier to determine the problem. And things like that make a big difference between knowing how to resolve an issue and being able to stop the problem before it's impacting your end users. One thing I want to stress is it's really important to use a single tool instead of a handful. There are sometimes a bunch of different tools that may be excellent at their jobs, but they don't necessarily talk to one another. What you want is something that could do a lot of things well and give you an overall context view. We do know for a fact that the more tools that a system or network administrator has at their disposal, or that they're required to use for their job, the worse their mean time to repair is. And we actually have statistics to back this up. Everyone is trying to make things simpler. So one system that lets you monitor and track everything is going to be a real game changer. So moving on to our next best practice is the question of, all right, we're monitoring our traffic. Where's the bandwidth going? That's a big underlying issue about a lot of the problems we've spoken about. So if media isn't streaming, that's a problem with the bandwidth. The questions come up like we've got a certain capacity and that's suddenly not available, or why is everything slow for everyone? Who's using your bandwidth, and more importantly, why? Let's take education, for example. There's often a very good use for video on bandwidth. It's easy to say in a government setting something like, oh, nobody gets to browse YouTube or stream media, but there are cases that can be relevant in education. And that's something you need to plan for and monitor. But at the same time, if somebody is showing an educational film or documentary in the classroom, that's the sort of thing you need to be made aware of and track. You don't want to be in a situation like the guy on the right here who's basically saying, hey, no one can use the bandwidth if I shut off access to the internet. You need to make sure it's allocated and understand how people are using it. The other piece of this too is that you want to get alerted. This isn't just a passive experience where you're just sitting here and watching things. You can set threshold alerts for if you want to know, if this connection hits 80% capacity, I want to make sure I get an alert. You want to be able to set this threshold to know how much bandwidth is being used and when that bandwidth starts to get out of control. So maybe you can make a phone call to the guy who's hogging all the bandwidth to tell him to pull back a bit. Similarly, I want to stress IT infrastructure monitoring tools are not security tools, but they are the sort of thing that will allow you to quickly detect when things are going wrong. Take a denial of service attack, for example. They're quite common. If you're seeing bandwidth spiking, this can give you an early warning about possible intrusions. And one thing we see a lot of with our government customers is that there tends to be a lot of hacking and intrusion attempts through IoT devices or even video cameras. Now, there's a certain steady amount of bandwidth that you can expect to get from a camera pointing at a hallway. If that suddenly shoots way up, either something very exciting is going on in that hallway, or someone's trying to get access through there. So these are the things that you can set alerts on too, so you have that extra layer of protection. And moving on, take yourself out of the equation. The majority of network outages and performance issues happen because something wasn't configured properly. Sometimes that's human error, and sometimes it was never set up properly in the first place. Either way, at some point, you want to automate a lot of this, because if you're human, you're going to make errors. It happens to all of us, and the more things you have to do manually, the more things you're going to find are causing problems. So when it comes to configuration, that's huge, because this not only applies to keeping the entire network working smoothly, which obviously is the primary goal, but also there's often a lot of regulations that impact how systems are configured. For example, if we want to block 8080 port on every single device, that's a configuration that you can either go through it on every single device and do it manually, Or you can do something like assign a device role and configuration, and this can happen during discovery. So you can say, hey, every router block port 8080, and that configuration gets automatically applied. Now, again, intrusion issues, someone can come in and often the first thing they do if they gain access to something is to change a local configuration to make it easier to gain access again. You can get alerted when that happens, and it's something you can monitor. With WhatsUp Gold, you can automatically revert to established configurations. So if you're really concerned with maintaining compliance, or you've got compliance requirements that dictate a specific configuration type, you want to automatically be able to revert to that if something gets changed, whether that's intentionally or maliciously. This can be really valuable as it can help you prove later that, hey, all the devices are configured the exact same. So if you get 50 new routers and you want to put them on board, no problem. You press one button and assign them a role, and the configuration gets automatically applied across the board. It's a huge lifesaver instead of trying to go through and doing it all manually and accidentally pressing the wrong key. Again, the alerts are a key part of this. When something goes wrong, you want to know about it so that you can investigate it further. With the level of visibility and observability that's going on right now with the public sector being targeted, you want as many early warning signs as possible. The other piece too is consolidation. I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. If you've got a variety of different pieces sending you information from a variety of different areas, it's overload. You can't really determine which item is screaming at you. What you want to get is all of your alerts coming from one area and coming in one stream that's easier to digest. So if they're consolidated, you can see the alerts and you can also get what they call metadata from the alerts. So if something goes down and then everything downstream goes down, well, the first one that went down gives you a lot more information. In fact, with WhatsUp Gold, you won't get alert storms like that. So if something goes down, it will automatically ignore any alerts coming from anything downstream. But similarly, if you're seeing a bunch of things go down and they're all in the same geographic area, it's worth a second look. Maybe there's been a power outage in that region and it's not just one individual item. Information like that goes a long way towards figuring out what the problem is and how to solve it. More importantly, if you've got everything coming in one spot, it makes it a lot easier for you not only to understand that information, but to also make it available to others. So we can set up alerts in a variety of different ways. You can get them through the web, email, or through communications platforms. And all of these can be to one or multiple people. The advantage of this, of course, is not only the increased efficiency, but the ability to identify issues before they start impacting your end users. And again, that's the entire point of all of this. And finally, a big piece of what's being required in the public sector is that everything needs to be recorded. People want to know what's going on. They want better visibility, and the higher ups want this especially. The more you can share information, the more you can keep everyone safe and keep everyone aware of what's going on with your network, the better. Reporting is a surprisingly important part of IT infrastructure monitoring that doesn't seem to get a ton of attention. You want to provide reports to people who need them because otherwise they're going to come annoying you for it. And you'll be putting these reports together manually. But if you can automatically generate the kind of reports that individual people need and get them out to them, then that takes a huge amount of effort and time off your plate that can be better spent doing almost anything else. So for example, you've got someone in accounting who simply wants to know what's our usage of cloud services versus what we're spending on it, because that's their job to manage the spend. Instead of them annoying you every week or two for updated information, you can have a system that automatically runs every morning and sends a report of what went on in the last 24 hours, week, or month, and have that email land directly in their inbox. The ability to schedule this makes a huge difference. There are hundreds of out-of-the-box reports that are built into WhatsUp Gold, but there's also no view or dashboard or data that you can't set up as a report. WhatsUp Gold does real-time performance monitoring, so you can get very granular down to the minute of when things are available or aren't. Another piece of this that's also important is that you can resolve a lot of issues regarding compliance and asset inventory requirements. Again, you need to prove that you're compliant with specific regulations. A regular report that comes out every week, the auditors aren't going to come calling. Asset inventory is another one that's interesting. We spoke about this earlier, where the public sector is under tremendous financial pressure to do more with less, and at the same time deal with aging networks. Not only are you able to do this with one click to create a complete list of every single asset in your network, but you can also determine how old they are, whether some of them have been patched, whether they need patching, or what OSs they're running. this has two advantages. Number one, it can show exactly how complicated the job is when people start wondering why you guys are spending money. And two, it can show you, hey, you know what? We've still got a bunch of old Windows Vista desktops out there, and they're not patchable or supported anymore. You can go to your boss and say, we need to cough up some money to replace these, as there's now a massive security hole. And all of a sudden, this does two things. First of all, it covers you as you've reported the issue. And second of all, it puts a little bit more pressure as someone's seen the reports and they go, yeah, you know what? We do need to do something about that. And it's regularly coming up. So don't think of reporting as a chore. Think of it as something you set up once that handles itself and something you can leverage. It is tremendously valuable to be in a meeting or at a budget review and say, hey, here's the data. And not only is this the data, but it's been in your inbox every week for the last year. So what exactly is WhatsUp Gold able to monitor? We spoke about this earlier on, but I just want to give you a brief overview. For network devices, we can monitor key metrics like interface utilization. We can monitor all of your system servers, even right down to the workstation to determine things like processor utilization, memory, storage. When do you need a new hard drive or various hardware performance indicators? And of course, virtual. Things get lost in virtual all the time. What's the CPU usage? Where are those virtual machines? What interfaces are they using? How much memory, for example? This is where you can get a real advantage in finding this stuff. And then, of course, wireless. We're in the world where no end user has plugged something physically into the machine in years, and they expect everything to be working without issues. All of these are the sorts of things that you can monitor with WhatsUp Gold, and you can get alerts on and fix them. This is kind of a double-edged sword, unfortunately, of being in the IT administrator space. If you're doing your job, everyone wonders why they're paying you because everything's working perfectly. But then when things don't work, they're also thinking, why are we paying you? It's basically thinking these guys can't keep the network up. What's wrong? What's the problem? And as I'm sure you all are aware, it's a thankless job, unfortunately, and it should be appreciated. But you're going to be much happier resolving issues before they actually impact your end users. So I kind of went a little bit broader than just the public sector with that last piece there. But at this point, I just want to let you know we have a good feeling for what our customers are doing and the challenges and pressures they're under and how we can help them. And with that being said, I'll now hand it across to Jason Alvarino, who's WhatsUp Gold's Principal Product Manager, for any questions you may have.
Hello, everyone. Trying to get my camera on. Doesn't seem to want to work, though. Let's try again. 1 second. There we go. Hello, everyone. So we got a few questions here, and I'll start going through them. Feel free to enter additional ones in the chat. As Greg mentioned, I'm product manager for the WhatsUp Gold product. I was a customer myself for 10 years. I've been working with WhatsUp Gold for nearly 20 years now, so lots of experience. Ask any questions you got. I'll start with the first one. Can WhatsUp Gold monitor applications or servers in the cloud? Absolutely, 100% yes. Not only that, but we can directly tie in using Azure AWS APIs and actually discover resources you have out there in addition to being able to monitor them. So it's really a great way to create accountability, right? Some of these cloud services do provide some form of monitoring, right? But they're monitoring in the context of their systems. It's great to monitor in the context of your systems where your employees access these resources, etc. Can we move applications in different locations, but from can we monitor applications in different locations, but from a single dashboard? Absolutely. So WhatsUp Gold has a distributed model where you can set up multiple systems and then roll up reports to a centralized system. So you have one source of truth when it comes to incidents and alerts to respond to. And do we receive all functionality when purchasing WhatsUp Gold? So it depends on which license you purchase, we'll say. So we have a WhatsUp Gold Total Plus edition, which includes WhatsUp Gold plus all of its add-ons. There are multiple different add-ons. We also have a premium edition where it's just WhatsUp Gold without the add-ons, and then you get to pick and choose which add-ons you potentially want to consume and get value from. That said, I would highly recommend our Total Plus edition where you get all the functionality. Some of the things Greg was talking about during the presentation relate to bandwidth monitoring. So yes, you can monitor bandwidth with WhatsUp Gold directly out of the box. That's just interface utilization, traffic percentages, numbers. If you have the network traffic analysis add-on, however, you get in-depth information about what is consuming the bandwidth down to, port and IP address level. So you can see what applications are using it or what users are consuming the most bandwidth, etc. All right. I don't see any other questions in the panel, so I'll give it another moment here, but I think we're going to wrap up. Thanks everyone for spending the time today, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Take care.